Hello and welcome to 1,000 Books Everyone Should Read That Are Actually Fun. So this is our first video reviewing a book. I've uploaded a single video before that, but that was just an introduction. So our first book review is Miss Marple's A Murder is Announced. This is by Agatha Christie. It was a book I selected because I was pretty sure I would like it. I have read several of Agatha Christie's books before, although none of them have been Miss Marple books. And so I thought this would be a good chance to read something to get back into reading that I would enjoy doing, even though I didn't think it would make my 1,000 book list. And I'm giving you spoilers now, it didn't. I will say though, no spoilers about the book. This is a murder mystery. I'm not going to tell you who done it. So plot of the book, very simply, is we have at the very beginning, a bunch of people in a little town. This takes place right after World War II. It was actually written right after World War II. It was written in the late 1940s, published in 1950. So it was very contemporary to Miss Agatha Christie's life. So it starts out at the very beginning of people reading the announcement of a murder in their local paper. It says, "A murder is announced and will take place on Friday, October 29th at Little Paddocks at 6:30 p.m. Friends, please accept this, the only intimation." I will say that last word, the only intimation, that caused me to stop and go, was there a typo there? It should be the only invitation, right? No, it actually meant intimation, which just means a hint or a clue. This was written, after all, over 80 years ago and is British. So there were a couple words in there that are just not common today in my circle of life. Anyway, so it starts out with announcing a murder. So everybody in town is kind of like, oh, what's that all about? And most people guess it's going to be a game, and so they kind of gather at the location being like, ooh, what's going to happen? This will be fun. And of course, a murder does take place. Then an inspector from the police show up and interview everyone. It is the typical murder mystery flavor. You slowly gather clues and discover if somebody was telling a lie or if they have something to hide or what their motives are. It slowly comes out. And in the end, of course, we solve the mystery. So that's really basic summary of this book. Doesn't tell you a whole lot. Because it is just a typical murder mystery. However, it's in Miss Marple. So, like I said, I have read several of Agatha Christie's, but they've all been not Miss Marple. And so I wasn't, let's just say that the way she handled Miss Marple here was not how I was expecting it. So as a Miss Marple mystery, I was expecting Miss Marple to have a large starring role in this book. Kind of like Hercule Poirot does in his books. He is the detective. He's the one that does all the interviews and discovers all the clues and everything. And Miss Marple doesn't. She is very much a background character in this book. I mean, she does give helpful insight to the inspector as time goes along, and she's the one that gives the denouncement at the very end of the book of this is all the backstory of why this happened that the reader doesn't always figure out. But I expected her to be more front and center. It almost felt like she was a cameo in her own book. It was kind of weird to me. Like she had 2 or 3 really prominent scenes, and the rest of it just wasn't about her. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I don't know if that's typical of Miss Marple books, or if this is just unusual, the way that the author did it, because this is not in Miss Marple's town and she is not a detective, so getting her involved in it maybe was a little awkward. I don't know. That was weird though. Okay, so my opinion of this book. I was less impressed with this book, surprisingly so, than I expected. And maybe it was because I had such high expectations. I mean, I never figure out the murder mysteries, the solution, or the clues or whatever in most of her books, except if they're like little short stories. And I did in this one. This one, before the big reveal happened, I'm like, I think I know who the murderer is. And I didn't have every clue as to the motivation. I didn't know why the murder happened. But I was pretty sure I knew who the murderer was. And I had also picked out a couple other of, because there's always background for other characters in Agatha Christie books. This character was blackmailing this character, or this character was thieving, or this character was having an affair, or whatever. They always have those kind of things in the background. The non-murderous characters are always doing something. And I figured out a couple of those too. And so looking at that, I'm like, is it just because I'm older, having read these books, have more life experience, or was this just not as good of a murder mystery? I'm kind of leaning toward it wasn't as good of a murder mystery, rather than me being totally brilliant. So that made me a little disappointed in the book. So my overall opinion of A Murder is Announced is that it's okay. That's kind of a disappointing revelation on this one. And like I said, I was not expecting it to be, blown away and thinking this was going to be such a marvelous, wonderful book that it would end up on my list. But I was expecting something a little bit better than it was. So, yeah, my overall opinion was it was just okay. I will say a couple other random things about the book. One is the language. So, Agatha Christie's books, they're obviously her main thing is the plot. And she does a fabulous job with her plotting, with all the behind the scenes and how, clues trickle out and how, you may suspect somebody and then they're ruled out and somebody who's ruled out earlier gets back on the suspect list, all that kind of stuff. So she does a great job with plotting. So she doesn't necessarily she's not known for other things that authors are known for. Like, she's not known for her great character development or her relationships or, big, epic, emotional sagas or anything like that. One of the things that she's also not known for is her lyrical language. Like, she gets the job done, but it's not something that you write home about and go, wow, what language, so much beauty. That's just not her. But there were a couple things that I did want to point out that I thought were pretty good. I'll just quote on page 10, so this is really at the beginning, introducing a character. He's described as this: Julian Harmon himself had clearly been a model designed by nature for age of 60. He was still about 25 years short of achieving nature's purpose. So it's a short description of somebody, but I just thought it was very cute. So just because she's not known for her, beautiful language doesn't mean she doesn't have a clever turn of phrase. I would also say Agatha Christie has a great handle on people. She does a fantastic job of understanding how people react. So one of the things that this book does a very good job of is, so a bunch of people are witness to the initial murder. You got, I don't remember, a dozen people. And the inspector comes and interviews each one. And all of them give basically a slightly different but accurate description of what the murder victim said right before he died. And that to me is interesting because that's the way real life is. Somebody hears something and you get the gist of what it is, but you may later on say it slightly differently. And that's one of those things that people who are police inspectors will notice. Like, if everybody gave the exact same answer for what happened, you would kind of think that they were collaborating. You wouldn't think that it was real, true to life. Anyway, so Agatha Christie knew that and did a great job with that. So again, my overall view is that it was just an okay book. Would I recommend it? Probably, especially if you like murder mysteries. But it wouldn't be the kind of book that I'd go out to people and go to all my friends and say, you've got to read this book. It was so amazing. It didn't make that quality. So it's not going to end up on my list for, as we're tracking down fantastic, fun books to read. It didn't make it. All right. So I think that's it for Agatha Christie's book. Our first one just was okay. I'm going to end up, and kind of just rambling as business there. I'm going to probably sort my videos for book reviews based on whether they go on the list, whether they're just okay, or whether they're absolutely horrible. And this one's just going to be in that middle of the ground, just okay books. However, if you are somebody who ends up finding this video in 100 years down the line and want to read all the same books along with me, I would recommend it. I'd say go for it. Start with that one. Okay, so part 2. Let's talk about what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to try all sorts of genres. My next genre is going to be fantasy. So I decided to pick somebody that is currently on bestseller lists, and that would be Brandon Sanderson. So he wrote a whole epic saga of some variety, and I've never read a single one of his books. And so when I was looking for a book by him, kind of silly the way this turned out, I'm like, okay, he has done his grand epic saga that's multi-generational, and I don't really want to get into that. That seems like too much, especially since I only want to dip my toe in and do one book. So I was looking on Amazon for books by him, and I'm like, oh look, there's a trilogy, Mistborn trilogy. Oh, okay, that's probably separate from his big long epic whatever it is. I'll start with this trilogy. Perfect. And so I got the book from the library, and looking at it a little bit more, and I discovered it is part of that epic, huge, long trilogy, saga that he has going on. This just happens to be towards the beginning, so I was like, oh, well, okay. If I like it, maybe I'll read more of his. So this book, Mistborn, is apparently not his first book in the series. There's apparently one book he wrote before, but it doesn't sound like these particular books have anything to do with each other. Like maybe there's some cameos from that first book, but it's not really related. And I get the impression, I'm hopeful, that this book is a standalone book. That's something that I can read by itself and finish it and go, great, if I love it, I can read more of his stuff. But if I don't, I could stop there and not feel like it was a big cliffhanger. That's kind of the impression I get. We'll see if I'm right. I would also like to point out that in my life, it took me about 2 days to read this size of book. And this one is twice this thickness, and it's got smaller print. So this is going to take considerably longer. But that'll still be fine. That'll be fun. We'll see if this is my first book on my 1,000 books that are actually fun. And hopefully you will join me on reading this for this week and decide if it's actually worth all the hype. All right, I think that's all I have for this week. Thank you for watching.